how long does it take? Like, can we tell who's...
Oh, so, okay, we started.
Watching?
Hello, everyone.
Oh, sorry.
Well, good evening. I'm Too Many Curls. This is February's Fic Night. We have our two amazing authors with us tonight, and we're going to read their story 5 times mirrors were used, plus 1 time they weren't. And here we have Facing the North Wind and Pop Punk Padfoot. And I'm Too Many Curls. I think I said that. And then Down in Flames will be reading with me. So for a 6,000 word story, I estimate 20 minutes. What do you think, Taylor?
That sounds about right.
Okay. All right. So this is a Marauder era story. It is rated... What is this rated?
Excellent question.
I don't know.
Rated mature.
I don't remember.
Advisory for sexual content. All right, let's get us started here. 1. Let me zoom in so I can read. Hold on, my mouse is having life issues.
Aren't we all?
All right. 1. When he got on the Hogwarts Express at the start of his 3rd year, Sirius barely had time to find a compartment and stow away his luggage before he was being accosted by James, who shoved a hastily wrapped parcel in Sirius's hands before Sirius could even get out the word hello. "What's this?" he asked, with his total confusion apparent in his voice. James didn't answer, just flapped his hands at him impatiently. So Sirius sat down and tore away the paper to reveal a small rectangular mirror. "All right," he said, a little indignantly. "Ha, very funny. I get it. I spend too much time on my hair." "No, you get," said James, still acting far too impatient for someone who was being so utterly baffling. And then he pulled out an identical mirror. They weren't even particularly nice mirrors. They didn't even have handles, not to mention they looked rather old, what with their tarnished frames and a thin layer of grime across the surface of the glass, and the fact that there were 2 of them didn't make Sirius any less confused. Before he could say anything, though, Remus entered the compartment, raising his eyebrows at the sight of James and Sirius sitting around holding matching mirrors. "Hello," he said mildly. "Worried Evans will suddenly burst in. Both of you look fine, by the way." "Shut up, Remus," said James, who had flushed bright pink. "They're not... both of you just... look." He held up the mirror to his face and said in a commanding voice, "Sirius." Then, before Sirius could respond, he gestured emphatically at the other mirror, which Sirius was still holding in his hand. He glanced skeptically down at it and jumped when, instead of his own reflection, he saw James's face staring back at him. "Two-way mirrors," James said gleefully, and Sirius heard him through the mirror as well, clear as day. It had the tiniest delay, making the experience sound weirdly like James had some kind of ghost. "My Aunt Jovitha sent them to me as a gift. Aren't they brilliant? We can use them when we're stuck in detention." Sirius was about to respond that they were completely bloody brilliant. He could see all the possibilities expanding in front of him, all the pranks they could pull, and all the rules they could break, when he realized that James hadn't accosted Remus with a parcel, nor did he seem to have one for Peter, who had just slid open the compartment door. "There's only 2 of them?" he frowned. His voice came out of James' mirror too, which was slightly disconcerting. "Well, yeah, but there's 4 of us," Sirius said slowly, waiting for James to notice the obvious problem with his gift. "Two-way mirrors," Remus said under his breath to Peter, who was looking rather lost. "Gift from James's aunt." "Do you really think McGonagall is going to be able to convince 3 other teachers to take us for detention?" James responded dismissively. "That's why she so rarely splits us up as it is. It's not like she hasn't thought about it." There was that time in April where you were repotting those horrible things in Greenhouse 2. What were they? Sirius asked, waving his arms in a gesture meant to convey James's attention. Bobotubers. Yeah, Bobotubers. And then Peter had to muck out the hippogriff stalls, and I had to clean Moaning Myrtle's bathroom, and Remus was in the hospital wing. Yeah, but that doesn't happen regularly, apart from Remus being in the hospital wing, I suppose. Why can't you get your aunt to send you another set? Peter piped up. Well, they'd not be on the same frequency, would they? Remus said from where he had been watching the conversation, seated nearest the door. The same what? Sirius frowned. The same frequency. Muggles have this thing. It's, phones either. You don't know phones either, do you? Remus was greeted with 3 identical blank stares. Telephones, in little red booths, he tried. Telephones, yes. Sirius looked very proud of himself, so Remus didn't bother to correct him. All right, anyway, Muggles have this thing called two-way radios where you and someone else have little machines you hold in your hands, and when you press a button, you can make your voice come out of the speaker of the machine that someone else has. But the way you make sure it's only the person you want to hear your voice is that you both use the same frequency. So if James got another set, they'd only be able to communicate with each other, not the ones James already has. But surely we could fix them, Sirius said, flipping the mirror over to inspect the back and see if he could spot the so-called frequency. Or take them to some regular mirrors and enchant them. Well, James seemed a little more embarrassed now. It appeared to Sirius that he hadn't thought only having 2 mirrors would be a problem. The thing is, Javitha... Okay, I need help on the last name here. Chithi?
Yeah, it's Javitha Chithi, and it's not a last name, it means aunt in Tamil. He's talking about his aunt.
Cool.
Yes.
Said that they're really old and that the enchantment is, I don't know, built into the glass or something. I didn't really understand everything she said in her letter, but I don't think getting or making 2 would be that simple. A dejected silence fell over the carriage until Sirius said at last, I guess it's just motivation to make sure we aren't in more than two places at the same time. Although, and here Sirius's face lit up, his grin crinkling his eyes. Imagine the pranking opportunities this will give us. No more enchanting paper birds, no more pranks foiled by unforeseen interference we couldn't communicate. This year is going to be the best one yet. My cousin gave me some of Zonko's new and improved dung bombs, Peter said, mirrors temporarily forgotten in favor of his contraband. They won't be out until the new year at least, and apparently they're 25% smellier. That's what he said anyway. Excellent. Can we put one in Mulciber's bag? James said eagerly. I've still not forgotten when he tripped Remus on the stairs last term. You can stop bringing that up any time now, James, Remus grumbled. No, I can't. It was undignified. It wasn't that big of a deal. Sirius and Peter rolled their eyes at each other as the other 2 bickered, but all 4 of them were distracted shortly by the welcome arrival of the snack trolley. The rest of the train ride was taken up with planning for the glorious year ahead, their heads full of the new heights of mischief that they could achieve.
2. Sirius was convinced that James Potter was the luckiest prick in the world. Reshelving books was one of the softest attentions one could possibly be given, especially considering that, after previous instances of mischief-making, the Marauders had been made to go into the Forbidden Forest to help clear out poison ivy, muck out hippogriff stalls, and polish every trophy in the trophy room by hand. And tonight, here Sirius was, fertilizing the most foul-smelling plants he had ever encountered with Peter, all because James had happened to be the one standing closest to Pince when she caught them in the restricted section. They had hit a tricky step with their Animagus project, and the books in the rest of the library had proven useless, and assigned them all detention. Apparently, she only needed one person's help in the library, and when she handed Peter and Sirius over to McGonagall, she'd smiled in an ominous fashion before saying that Professor Sprout needed some assistance. It was really unfortunate that Sirius had herbology the first period the next morning, because he never wanted to see a greenhouse ever again. With a loud groan, he shoveled more hippogriff manure onto the stinking thistleworts, a deeply unpleasant plant made even worse by the fact that he was currently up to his shins in literal shit. He went to take off his dragonhide gloves with his teeth before he realized the grievous error he was about to make and made do with pulling them off with his fingers. At last he was free and put his hand in his robe pocket to retrieve the mirror. "James Potter," he said desperately, and the mirror went black, but he could hear James humming to himself as he shelved. After about 10 seconds, 10 long, long seconds, James pulled the mirror out of his pocket and said quite cheerfully, "Hello." "Don't hello me, you wanker," Sirius snapped. "I'm up to my knees in hippogriff manure, while you're over there in the manure-free library flirting with Madam Pince, and it's all your fault." "It's not really all his fault," said Peter from the other side of the greenhouse. "You were the one who she spotted first." "He's the one who picked the time." "I thought it would be safe. Pince usually has her tea in office after lunch," James protested. He did it quietly, though, looking behind his shoulder at something Sirius couldn't see. Sprout had confiscated his and Peter's wands so they couldn't speed up the thing with magic, which was such nonsense. What was the point of making things purposefully inefficient just for the sake of punishment? It was all, in Sirius's humble opinion, completely silly. If he'd had a wand, Sirius would probably have written a note detailing all his feelings regarding Madam Pince, put them in a paper swan, and made that swan repeatedly run into James's skull. "Last time we trust you to know where teachers are. I wish we could, I don't know, have some kind of thing that tells us where they are all the time. And if they start moving, grab for an arm, because you've proven yourself incapable of being on watch, dickhead." James rolled his eyes. "Like you're so much better at it. Anyway, what would really be helpful would be a list of all the secret passageways in the castle. It would make it much easier to get away quickly." Sirius paused in his shit-shoveling to consider this. "We could kill two birds with one stone, make it a map that has all the teachers and the passageways." "How would we manage that? The staircases are constantly changing. It would never be up to date," Peter said. "I guess if it has the locations of the teachers, it could also have the locations of the stairs." "Now you're talking," Sirius said. "Peeves, too. It could always be watching and collecting data on likely movements. That would cut down on all the reconnaissance. Especially when we went to dunk bomb the Slytherin common room again," James said in an extremely enthusiastic whisper. "How will it know who's who? It's not like your name is innate or anything," Sirius asked, though it sounded more to himself than directed to the other two people in the conversation. James waved his hand, unconcerned. That's a problem for future us. I think this is a stellar idea, lads. Mooney might have some ideas about the actual implementation. I wonder if there are any existing maps of Hogwarts we could work off of. I'll have a check while I'm here in the library." "Good. I'll save some hippogriff shit for your bed." "Shove off," James replied, then glanced over his shoulder and startled. "Oh hell, I have to go. Pince is coming over." Before Sirius could even say goodbye, the mirror went blank. Sirius pouted at it, but didn't call James back, knowing that if he got caught, they'd be in much deeper shit. No pun intended. "Are you really going to put hippogriff dung in his bed?" Peter asked, his nose crinkling as he pressed manure into the soil of a particularly large and awful-smelling thistlewort. "Nah, then we'd have to spend all night smelling it. I'll just spike his breakfast with some of that hair color changing potion we got last week." "Wicked," Peter said, and they resumed their shoveling.
3. It had been 4 days and 7 hours, give or take, since James had heard from Sirius. As the winter break had drawn closer and closer, James had tried everything he could think of to prevent Sirius from having to go home to Grimmauld Place. He had been invited to stay at the Potters more than once, and James had even asked his Amma to write to Sirius and invite him herself. Sirius could never say no to Amma. But say no he had. Apparently his mother was insisting he spend the holidays at home, and she'd make it clear that it was completely non-negotiable. When the two of them had parted ways at platform 9 3/4, Sirius had walked away with the air of a condemned man being led to a hangman's rope, and James had been helpless to do anything but watch him go. He had tried to put it out of his mind for the most part. He sent letters and called him on the mirror every day or two, but there was no point in twisting his insides up over the fact that Sirius was alone in his own house with his frightful family. He had his suspicions about what happened over the summers, but nothing confirmable, as Sirius was loath to talk about anything regarding his family, and there was absolutely nothing he could do about it. Okay, so he did worry about it quite a lot. It was a problem. Appa or Appa?
Appa.
Appa, all right.
I don't actually speak Tamil. I'm just guessing.
Appa had suggested that perhaps Walburga Black would let Sirius come over for a few days, at least, which James thought was worth a shot. Except now he couldn't even get a hold of Sirius to ask him about it. His last owl had gone unanswered, and whenever he tried him on the mirror, there was only darkness on the other end. Sirius's mirror seemed to be in a drawer or something, though he could occasionally hear a muffled muggle rock music, which at least assured him that Sirius hadn't been bound and gagged in the cellar. As he started to get a bit desperate, he took to having the mirror on him all the time, propped up where he could glance at it on his desk or on his side table. At some point, Sirius had to take it out of the drawer, right? Surely? He was at last rewarded by Sirius's voice saying, "How long have you been staring at my underwear?" James jumped, absorbed as he was in the dirty novel he had stolen off his mum's bookshelf, which he promptly flung to the other side of the room when he realized the title was completely visible. "Is that where you put it? I've had it on for hours. I tried to get your attention by shouting yesterday, but where have you been?" "At home," Sirius said, deliberately not answering the question like a wanker. It was fine. James could poke him for more information later. "Are you all right?" James said before his brain caught up with his mouth. It was never a good idea to ask Sirius if he was all right, mostly because A, he rarely was, and B, he never wanted to admit it. Not to mention, C, he would shut down if he suspected James knew he wasn't all right, which was a crock of shit because of course James knew. That's what best friends were for. "Yes," Sirius shot back defensively. "I just need to need you to just wow. I just need you to distract me for a bit, if you don't mind." It sounded as though he was having to force each word out of his mouth, one by one. "It's Mum, on the warpath again, and I'm sick of hearing her voice, quite frankly." Was Sirius looking a little thin, or was that just James's brain creating problems where none existed? He cursed the existence of holidays, though he had never admitted out loud that he preferred term time. People might realize he was secretly a massive loser, and it wasn't like he enjoyed writing essays or anything, but all of his friends were at school, and sometimes bland cooking was more than enough to put up with compared to the frustration he was feeling now as he sat several counties away and an impossibly long time away from his best friend in the whole world. Before he could respond, or Sirius could say anything else, there was a crash in the background. Sirius winced almost imperceptibly at the sound of his mother's angry voice the sound of his mother's angry voice carried up the stairs. James couldn't quite make out what she was saying, but she definitely did not sound happy. "Did you see the new Martin Miggs comment come out?" James asked a little desperately. "It's loads better than the last one." "Oh, good. The last one was bloody awful." "I know. I know he's a mad muggle and all, but it's still got to be believable. You can't have people just... Do you think they invented this pager nonsense? It's like something magical, which totally threw me out of the story completely." "Well, they do have telephones," Sirius pointed out. "And wasn't Remus telling us about something talkies? But we don't even have a good way to send messages like that with magic. We're still using owls, Padfoot. Owls." "I bet muggle thingies don't shit on your head," Sirius said wistfully. "Or crash into your breakfast cereal." Oi, leave Freddie Mercury alone. He's trying his best. Freddie Mercury was the old blind owl that Sirius had insisted on adopting from a shelter over the summer after his old owl. Did you guys do Xavier or Javier?
We did not talk about the owl's name. You can take your pick.
I'm going Javier.
Okay.
After Javier had died, which he had then named after some Muggle singer in order to spite his mother. In fairness to Freddie, he had only crashed into James's breakfast cereal once. But still. He's blind, James argued. Yes, exactly. He's trying his best. Just buy a new owl pad foot. I'll even give you money for it, just to protect my future breakfasts. No, fuck off. I love Freddie, and I refuse to abandon him. That made James want to say something corny about how Sirius was right not to abandon Freddie, and how James would never abandon Sirius. But he swallowed the urge because, despite the fact that he was a 15-year-old boy, he had some common sense. If Remus were there, he'd point out that James frequently said, "Good night, lads, I love you." But that was different because it was in the dark, and rules were suspended in the dark. Everyone knew that. I can send you a copy of the new comic, he says instead. I mean, unless you think you can get your own. Could you send me some Spider-Man comics? Mom confiscated my last lot, and it ended on a cliffhanger. Some what? Spider-Man. Surely I've told you about him. The Muggle comic about a kid who has web slingers because he was bitten by a radioactive spider or something. It's good. Way better than Martin Miggs. But didn't Mooney say they got a whole new currency system or something? It was hard enough using the old one. Oh, right. Sirius looked crestfallen for a moment, but hitched his smile back up quickly, although it looked slightly strained now. Miggs is fine then. That would be great. So what else is new? James was about to float the idea of Sirius coming to visit, although clearly he would have to ask his mom about it later, when she wasn't in a rage. When there were thumps on Sirius's end, Sirius's mom's voice, which was much clearer and closer now, shouted, "You lazy, worthless piece of scum. You better not be hiding more Muggle filth in your room." And James instantly lost the picture and heard the drawer slam. He considered eavesdropping on whatever horrible events were about to unfold, but instead disconnected with a tap on the surface of his mirror. Sirius wouldn't want him to hear it. A week later, he ventured out into the great unknown, read the Muggle High Street, and found his way into a comic book shop, convincing the confused person behind the counter that he needed help paying because he was Indian and hadn't used British money before. It turned out, much to James' surprise, that Muggles had not, in fact, changed their currency, but it didn't make using it any less baffling. It was worth it, though, when he got back to school and Sirius saw he'd bought him not only the new Martin Miggs, but also all of the Spider-Man comics he could find in the shop.
Four. Remus wasn't even supposed to have the mirror, was the thing. He had it from a reconnaissance mission the previous evening, where they'd slid up and investigated secret passageways, hoping to find another one that led out of the school grounds. They hadn't managed it, but Remus had every intention of giving the mirror back. It's just that he forgot. It happens. It's not the end of the world. Usually. Except now, here he was in this prefect's meeting where he'd completely forgotten to mention to the other Marauders, and he was giving a report on the success of the peer mentoring they were trying out. Relatively abysmal, to be honest, but he was desperately trying to phrase that in a less disastrous way. And right in the middle of his sentence, his fucking bag began to speak. You'd think they'd work out the kinks of this mirror thing, given how fancy my aunt made these sound. They seem to take longer to connect if they're further apart, and that's nonsense. Ooh, is it connected already? I wonder where he is. He doesn't have any other friends. James's voice rose in the mortifying silence. Everyone, literally everyone, was staring at him. Before Remus could say anything to salvage the situation, although what he could possibly say was beyond him, his bag piped up again. He definitely needed to get a new friend. Bloody hell. "Oi, Remus, you prat," said Sirius's voice. "Get back here. We've got shit to do." "Maybe he's with a girl," Peter snorted in the background. Wasn't Alice Whelan making eyes at him yesterday? You know, Derek says she gives good handies. Chumley? When were you talking to him? Hungerford had us switch up partners in divination, Peter said. And Remus could almost hear a shrug. Nice bloke. Who gives a shit about that? Sirius scoffed. We have more important things to worry about. Such as, and then he practically hollered, Remus, are you getting a handy right now? For some reason, Remus was frozen, slowly getting redder and redder, but being entirely unable to move his hands to try to at least put an end to this. The head boy, Gerard Piffling, said, Lupin, I have no idea what you have in your bag, but I would suggest you make it stop. He did not sound remotely amused. In fact, he rather sounded as though he would have revoked Remus's prefect badge right that moment if he could. Remus wanted to die. The problem was probably that the mirror was contraband. It wasn't on the list officially, but he was definitely worried that if people stricter than he was, i.e. the entire room he was currently in, saw it, it would be confiscated on the spot. Which was how he ended half running, half tripping out of the prefect meeting, trying to look like he was going at a perfectly respectful and not at all suspicious walking speed. He could never return. He was doomed. He may as well hand in his badge now. He rounded a few corners and ducked into a passageway behind a tapestry before he dared to pull the mirror out of his bag. The others had kept up a running stream of commentary about the handjob he was supposedly receiving, complete with copious amounts of ruckus laughter the whole time. Before holding up the mirror, he fixed his most threatening glare onto his face, although he wasn't sure how successful it would be given his burning red cheeks. Then he cleared his throat and snapped, Will you lot please shut the hell up? Finally, Sirius said, clearly completely ignoring the fact that Remus wanted to murder the lot of them. Where have you been? I can't believe you have secret friends, although your face is quite red. Maybe the handy wasn't so far off? No, you Sorry. I was in a prefect meeting, and then your absolute tripe starts coming out of my bag. I'll probably lose my badge. All the other prefects were there, and the heads. Sirius, who was the only person Remus could actually see, did not look even close to the appropriate contrite. In fact, it was only a moment before he dissolved into giggles. You were close, Pete. There was head involved. Clearly, Remus was not being taken seriously, so he went in for the kill. Lily was sitting right next to me. She heard all of it, was glaring something fierce, too. James's face appeared, and it, at least, did not look quite as pleased. Did you explain? Explain? What on earth could I say? I just ran right out. There's no way to explain your absolute nonsense. I'm going to... This may well be the last use of my badge I get, but I'm giving you all attention. You're all horrid. Aw, Mooney, don't be like that, Sirius said, fighting to keep a straight face. How will we face detention without you? Fuck off. He's obviously joking, said Peter, his forehead appearing in the frame. Mooney would never. I will now, Remus said, trying to sound as stern as possible. 1 night of detention for each of you. I don't know what you'll be doing yet, but I'm going to make sure it's horrible. No, come on, Mooney, James started, and then, you can't be serious, from Peter, and we'll go do a chocolate run from the kitchen just for you if you just... Remus ignored all of them and tapped on the mirror with finality. The surface instantly went blank. Honestly, his friends were going to be the death of him.
5. What am I going to do? What if I muck this up? You won't muck it up, Sirius said, trying to sound as soothing as possible through his total exasperation. James had called him on the mirror from the 3 Broomsticks bathroom. Apparently, this date with Lily was enough for James to banish the other marauders from the entire pub, but he was still able to yell at Sirius next to a urinal. Weird bloke. That's easy enough for you to say. You don't need to worry about your dates, James said, which was entirely unfair because James had been the one whom Sirius had panicked to whom Sirius had panicked extensively before he told Remus about his giant bleeding crush on him. It's just that after that brush with the terrifying void, it had been really easy. Not much had changed. Honestly, it's just that they snogged a lot in addition to doing all the normal things like playing pranks and occasionally forging each other's handwriting for essay purposes. What if I do something she doesn't like? James continued before Sirius could come up with a retort. What do girls like, Padfoot? Sirius waited a beat so James could hear what he had just said. It continued longer than Sirius would have liked because James just continued looking at him like some kind of terrified deer, haha, instead of realizing the obvious. What the fuck do I know about girls, mate? He pointed out eventually, his exasperation coming through very clearly now. Look, she asked you out, so you've clearly got some redeeming qualities. Although she's probably not a fan of you talking to someone else and leaving her alone. Maybe she'll send in a search party, concerned you've fallen in. Or maybe she's relieved that I've fucked off and she's back at a table plotting her escape, James replied, a little hysterically. She doesn't need to plot prongs. She can just leave. Oh shit, what if she's left? James Fleamont Potter, take a deep breath and stop panicking, please. For 1 second, trust me on this. James made a heroic effort to stop hyperventilating. Then he looked a little less manic. Sirius said, Okay, good. I'm proud of you. Now listen to me. Lily asked you out. She definitely wants to spend time with you, and that time is disappearing with every moment you spend next to a dirty urinal asking your gay best friend for girl advice. But listen, Prongs, if you just calm down a little, you won't screw this up. You're funny and reasonably charming and not a total prat anymore, usually. And if you somehow manage to completely blow it on this date, which you won't, Mooney can talk to her or something. She likes you. You like her. Just go out there and show her very calmly how much you like her. Don't regress back to 5th year, and you'll be completely fine, okay? After a long moment, James sighed. Okay, he said reluctantly. But if I make a complete arse out of myself, you're going to have to comfort me. You've been making a complete tit of yourself in front of Lily for years, and you're still on a date with her, Sirius said. The sky rumbled ominously, and he hoped he wasn't about to get rained on. Remus had probably eaten half of their haul from Honeydukes without him. What with how long this disaster had taken, and there was only so far he was willing to go for his useless best friend. Well, that wasn't true. Sirius liked to think there was a limit somewhere, though. Okay, fair point. I can do this. I can do this? You can do this. I can do this, James repeated, although more to himself than Sirius. All right, I'm going to go back out there. I believe in you. I'll save some chocolate for you if Remus hasn't demolished it all already. You're the best, James said, finally smiling. I am the best, you're right. Go get her. I'll talk to you later, Pads. Thank you. Sirius just waved a hand at him, as if to say don't mention it, and turned the mirror off. Now that the crisis was hopefully averted, he could finally get back to Remus and Peter. He really hoped they'd saved some sweets for him, although if they needed to, they could probably just go back to Honeydukes. He had a feeling that James and Lily were going to be a while.
+1. It had been Remus's brilliant idea. Most of Remus's ideas were brilliant, and this one was no exception. He had shown up the first week Sirius stayed at Grimmauld Place, and he'd opened his bag and pulled out 2 identical mirrors, and Sirius had had to push down the overwhelming urge to kiss him. I thought you should have these, he'd said, and Sirius was so choked up that he couldn't even speak. But he'd reached out to take one of the mirrors, already feeling relief sweeping over him at the prospect of being able to talk to Remus whenever he wanted, of not being alone in this fucking house, and Remus had handed him both mirrors. You should give one to Harry, said Remus, for while he's at school. Oh, Sirius had said, trying not to sound as close to tears as he felt. It was absurd, was the thing. He had no right to be sad, not when the distance between them, every detail of their fucked up circumstances, all of it was his fault. And it was a good idea, a brilliant idea even, to give one to Harry. But it still felt like there was a gaping hole in his chest, and he hated it. He felt like that a lot these days. He'd cleared his throat as subtly as possible and said, Which one is mine? Expecting that they would have to test them both. But Remus had responded instantly. This one is James's, he'd said, pointing at the mirror in Sirius's left hand. The one with the little scratch in the corner is yours. He turned a bit pink at the baffled look Sirius gave him and murmured, I remember these things. You scratched it when you flung it at Peeves that one time, with the pumpkins? Right, said Sirius, pretending he knew what Remus was talking about, because he didn't want to see the look that always appeared on Remus's face. when he realized that Sirius had forgotten a moment he should have been able to remember. There was an echo in the back of his mind. You're bloody lucky you didn't break it, Padfoot. I might have throttled you. But it arose and disappeared again without context. Then Remus had left, and Sirius had stored the mirrors in his desk drawer. Did you see the new Martin Miggs comic come out? It's loads better than the last one. Because Harry was at school, and it would be far too risky to send him a package. But he'd given Harry the mirror eventually, when he'd come for Christmas break, and he'd even managed to resist the temptation to tell him to please call as much as he could, because Harry was a teenage boy with far too much on his shoulders already. He didn't need the added responsibility of babysitting his useless godfather when he should be enjoying himself at school. He still kept his mirror on him at all times, just in case. He didn't want to miss a call if Harry needed him for anything. Perhaps he'd been too vague when he gave him the package. Maybe everything was somehow going smoothly with Snape's occlumency lessons. Either way, if Harry didn't want to call, he wasn't going to force the issue. Even when Harry used the flu instead, Sirius didn't say anything. It didn't seem like the right time, or maybe Sirius was just terrified of Harry saying he didn't want to talk to him very often. And so Sirius carried a silent mirror around his silent house, and Harry never called. And months later, when Sirius raced off to the Department of Mysteries to go save Harry from whatever misconceptions he had, he left it on the kitchen table, not wanting to risk it getting damaged if there was a fight. Because as soon as this business at the Department of Mysteries was over, he was sure as hell going to remind Harry that he could call him on those mirrors at any time.
My hot take, but I hate you guys so much.
Is that a hot take? After that ending, I don't think that's a hot take.
I would call that a lukewarm take.
I got to that section earlier today, and I was just like, oh, no.
It was so hard to write because it's a massive, plot hole in the actual books.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
it is.
We were writing this section, and I got so frustrated that I called Emma on Discord, which we don't actually usually do, and I was just like, what is happening? Like, why did they just, I was, freaking out about this mirror.
Because, why wouldn't Sirius, remind him in a letter? Why on earth? The flu
bring it up.
after. Isn't the flu call after he gives him the mirror?
Yeah. And then he doesn't say during the flu call, by the way, remember that mirror I gave you so you don't have to sneak into your headmaster's office and steal her flu pot?
I know. He just...
Anyway.
So I think the reason that I hate you both is because the first 5 sections were so extremely not warm, but good times-ish, friendship, camaraderie, early love. And this last section is holy shit, this is when Sirius dies. And, part of the plot hole that led to him dying was Harry not having a good channel of communication there. And I hate you for leading me down this kind of, peppy path and then ending with this anchor of sadness and blah.
It was in the title.
I mean, we could have done a different +1. We could have done I don't know. I actually didn't think of anything.
Oh, you could have done the night that James and Lily died.
How is that better, Rose?
That's not fair.
I'm less upset about that.
Sorry, wait, what?
She said that we also could have done the night that James and Lily died. And I said, how is that better, Rose?
How dare you, Rose?
Oh, that would also be a really upsetting. Sirius just trying to call through the mirrors and nothing on the other end.
I should write an alternative +1.
I'm not saying that we should definitely write this, but
Hey, all the people in the chat calling me and Emma monsters, can you please turn your ire on Taylor and Rose for this insanity right now?
but also, Kayla, we do have to write this.
Yeah, you're right, fuck.
No, I think the monster part was your reaction to my hot take.
I mean, also we were both literally grinning like lunatics the whole time Taylor was reading.
Just like, this is when they're going to cry.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Oh. I'm not full on crying, but my eyes are stinging from the tears.
Wait, Sam. Who is boning Sam?
Sam has said this before that like they're not using the partners because Rebus and Sirius and like James and Lily were too busy having sex to use the mirrors, which is a much hornier story than you and I usually write. So I think
or cornier?
projecting a little bit on that.
We are not known for sexy times.
We're known for being very rude all the time. It's kind of our thing.
I feel like our main thing is they aren't, and that's very sad.
Okay, I will say maybe this is a little too mature for the channel, but when I saw the 5 times they used mirrors, my first time was like, oh, what, with sex?
Who do you guys think we are? Have you no sense of our respective like portfolios?
No, it was mostly just like reading the title and then having a big ... before I read the authors.
Oh, okay, fair enough. Yeah, that'll do it.
Yeah, Sam and I are.
Sam,
Love you, Sam.
Right now. We do love you, Sam. You're great, Sam.
Okay.
I'm just rapping with Sam.
All right. I don't have any other specific questions. Anything from the chat since we have 10 people watching.
I think 2 of them are me and Emma.
Yeah.
Rabble rousing in the chat.
I'll throw one out, which is I want to know your collab writing strategy. Like, do you ever like attempt to split things up, or do you just go for it and write on top of each other?
Yeah. We're in the Google Doc at the same time. Yeah, Emma, go ahead.
So basically we open a Google Doc and then we'll give it like a joke title, like Brink 4, the Brink brings back or something. Which is definitely a Google Doc that we do have.
Yeah.
And then basically one of us will start, and then if you hesitate for like even a second, then it's fair game. Like we will frequently, like, someone is in the middle of a sentence and then the other person will just finish the sentence.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, that's happened now.
So are you guys both like on a Skype call during this, or just both in the document at the same time?
Yeah.
We're almost never on voice or video at all, to be honest. Like, pretty rare.
Yeah, sometimes Kayla is like so frustrated that she's like, Emma, I've got to call you so that I can express properly in voice.
That's usually when I hit a plot hole. I'm just like, I can't even type right now. I'm so annoyed. Like, but yeah, I mean, yeah.
And I mean, like, we're like, both of us, you know, have the right to delete what the other person has written. Like, it's not like, well, it's in the document now, we can't do anything about it. Like, if one of us had like a completely different idea of how it was going to go.
Okay, do you ever have like where one of you wrote something and the other one's like, I didn't think that, but the other person's like, that's the idea I love the most? Or are you guys two just like hive mind for that to ever really happen?
I feel like we are two same brain for that.
Yeah, we literally, I don't remember who, I think it was Emma came up with this, but like very early on in our friendship, we started referring to ourselves as having same brain syndrome because we can like literally finish each other's sentences and in the doc, and the thing that normally happens is that the other person whose sentence got finished will be like, that was exactly where I was going with that. It's like what normally happens. And I think if anything ever does, if there's any sort of like conflict, we usually would just like have a pretty quick conversation about it, I think, and like go one way or the other.
Yeah, it's usually like, that wasn't what I was thinking. And then you're like, oh, okay. And then they write down what they were thinking. And you're like, well, that was much better than my idea.
Yeah. I will say this, which is that I generally regard Emma as being like a dialogue wizard who's like much better at dialogue than I am. And I'm like maybe an easy tiny bit better at the like non-dialogue type stuff. So what sometimes will happen, I've
just
noticed,
own it, buddy.
sorry. Emma will just like start writing dialogue, like almost like a script, and I'll just go back and like fill in whatever's not dialogue in between the sentences is a thing that sometimes happens, but not always.
Yeah. No, that is definitely a thing. And I'm like, I don't want to explain what's going on, so I'll just write like I'll just let Kayla imagine it.
Do you guys kind of lean towards one character when you're writing? Or do you guys kind of kick to the dialogue, non-dialogue-ish split?
We always forget Peter.
Yeah, we do. Real bad. I do remember we were writing some collabs for the House Cup.
Mm-hmm.
And we were like really coming up against those word limits, like really bad. And at some point we were like right there at this word limit, and we were like, Peter's in the story. We forgot about Peter. We had to like add a bunch of like stuff about Peter, and it took us over our word count, so we had to like edit a bunch of other stuff out because we forgot about Peter. Yeah, it's a disaster.
Like there were definitely multiple points in this fic particularly where we were like, this bit has to have Peter. We've got to remember to put Peter in somewhere.
Oh God. And I don't know, I think it's not so much with writing dialogue, but sometimes like I find Emma is like amazing at writing Rebus. And obviously
okay, good. I'm so glad that I was like, well, obviously Kayla is the serious. Okay, good. Excellent.
So occasionally it'll be like how do you think Remus would do this specific thing, or like how do you think that Sirius would answer this question? But I don't think that happens super often.
I think in any great duo, there's one Remus and one Sirius. Just putting that out there.
And we're both got clinical depression, so I mean that checks out. Like,
yeah. Nobody asked about this, but Emma did, and I'm gonna count this. Which is so. Actually, like we're kind of jerks because when we write a collab, in the author's note, we'll be like, hard mode, who wrote what, and it's a trick question because you can guess all you want. Neither of us know. Like we completely lose track immediately. Like we have no idea. But I will say in this fic, I know for a fact that Emma wrote like Lily asked you on a date, and you're wasting it with every minute that you stand next to a urinal talking, like stand next to a urinal. So
yeah.
Whatever. And then I remember this because I was the one who went back in and I added standing next to a urinal, asking your gay best friend for girl advice. I remember distinctly adding that phrase because I was like, this is the only time I've written better dialogue than Emma in my whole entire life. And it will never happen again. So that I know I wrote that.
Like, okay, Kayla is selling herself short here. Like, Kayla has definitely written dialogue in our fics before. And if you can't tell whose, and I can't, I have no idea where Kayla has written dialogue. I just know that it must have happened.
I have written dialogue. I'm just saying.
Then clearly it is of the same caliber because you can't tell.
Well, I do just very vividly remember that line. I definitely wrote that line. I got nothing else though. I have no idea.
I believe you. I have no memory of that line.
Tell us the background story of the owl.
Oh, that's all Emma. I got nothing.
Well, it was because we were arguing about what. So we weren't arguing. We were discussing. And I can't find the beginning of the discussion, so it must have been like in the Google Doc itself. So it's lost to time. But we were discussing what the owl was going to be called, and obviously we wanted to name it something, seriously. But like then we were like, oh, but if it were like if he got the owl when he started school, for instance, then he wouldn't have named it Freddie Mercury because that doesn't make any sense. So then we decided that his old owl did die, and that he went to a shelter because he didn't want the owl to feel unloved like he did. And that's why Freddie Mercury is such a useless owl.
Yeah.
And because, like he bonds so quickly with Buckbeak, who is arguably a danger to himself and others. So like
yeah.
I love Freddie Mercury. He is so bad at his job.
We stand Freddie Mercury.
Also, Renee, you don't have to call us out like that.
What did Renee say?
No, I can't tell. Like, I think that so Bronwyn and Renee, are you guys having an argument in the chat?
They're talking about advocating for Peter Pettigrew. Versus defending Peter Pettigrew, and apparently those.
Okay, so it's just like, what is even happening now? Okay. Any other questions from us or the audience, or
I thought Renee was saying that. Sorry, I thought Renee was saying that it wasn't obvious that Kayla and I were not arguing about the owl name because we argue all the time on Twitter, which is fair. It's just that
I don't know. I think we joke about arguing all the time on Twitter.
Yes. I don't think we have many arguments on, say, Discord. I think we perform arguments on Twitter.
Yeah.
For fun.
For the lol.
For fun arguments are for fun.
Yeah.
So, okay. Any other comments about the story that people should know before we sign off for the evening?
Well, it was really fun to write. I definitely had a good time.
Did you guys cry?
Oh man. When so the idea like sat in my sort of fic ideas file for months and months and months. And I was like, this is the perfect 5+1. But obviously 5 times the mirrors were used would have to be pranks, and I can't come up with pranks. But then I can't was it the 5+1 challenge? Yeah, it must have been.
Yeah.
And I was like, Kayla, I have a concept for you. And so like basically the title was all I had. And then I was like, oh no, we have to come up with pranks. And then like very quickly we decided no pranks. And Kayla was like, we're geniuses. We went from 5 pranks to no pranks so fast. Because we both hate coming up with pranks.
Yeah, I feel like a pranks trope would have gotten stale.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. but we're also just real bad at it, and it's actually kind of a consistent problem because we both write Marauders fics, and there are often moments where we're like, we need a prank right here. I got nothing. And then we have to find a way to kind of maneuver around the prank that we need. But yeah.
Also, Sarah, what makes you think that we wouldn't have written you 5 pranks and then broken your heart? Like,
yeah, that's what would have happened, Sarah.
Yeah. The heartbreak was like baked in from the beginning.
Yeah. But Rose, I will answer your question. I mean, I would hope that people could guess this based on us both smiling maniacally the whole time Taylor was reading the +1. But no, we do not cry while writing our stories. We're monsters.
No, because I'll cry when I write sad scenes, but then I like grin like an idiot when somebody reads it and tells me how devastated they are.
I think we mostly just go on Discord and we're like, this is terrible. And then we yeah. I didn't cry. Did you cry, Emma? I wouldn't know.
Okay, look, that's assuming that I remember writing this fic. And I don't. So
there you go.
But I mean, mostly, like, when something is too sad to the point where I'm like, people will be angry with me, I'm like, Kayla, I'm a bad person for writing this fic. I should just not write it. And then Kayla is like, Emma, please write the fic. And then I do write the fic. And then no one actually, swats my house for, making Remus and Tonks real sad. So.
Yeah. But I will say, like, it's interesting. I saw somebody. We do, Sam. That's true. We do go into trances and mind meld, but it's really,
absolutely.
It's really just kind of a more intense version of what we normally do.
Yes.
If you go into like any fic by either me or Emma since like I want to say September 2019, at least one line is written by the opposite person, and like basically every fic
fic is a secret collab.
Yeah, and honestly, a lot of the time I can't even tell you what that one line is. There is one of my stories. I always forget which one unless I'm actively looking at the reviews on it. But all the reviews, people are like, this one line is so good. And I'm like, thanks, Emma wrote it, not me. It wasn't me. So it's just kind of natural at this point. We're very used to it.
Actually, yeah, I think one of the only fics that definitely didn't have any Kayla specifically writing anything was the remix I did of Kayla's fic, and obviously Kayla did write all the dialogue inherently, like because of how the fic worked. But Kayla refused to write anything else, and I was like, Kayla, how do I live? How did I write fic before Kayla?
I did it. I doubled my word count last year from the 2 years previously, because what used to happen is I would get stuck and I'd be like, I guess I have to give up forever, and then I would walk away from the fic for like 6 months and not touch it. And now I'm like, Emma, I'm stuck, and I was like, and then I keep going and I finish the fic. That's great.
And then I frequently just bully you into it, and I'm like, Kayla, please, the fake date, it's so good.
Yeah. So
I need won, and it honestly felt like I had won.
What, Rose?
I said I need an Emma.
Everyone should find an Emma, but not this Emma. This is my
Emma. No, an Emma. Not like I'm not going to take your Emma.
Oh my God.
I mean, I am willing to, just like hit me up on Discord like anytime. Like, I am happy. Like, I don't know that it will work as well for someone that I'm not like mysteriously
Yeah, no, it's
telepathically.
okay. I mean, the brain
but-
connection, the excitement, all the things.
I did not hear the beginning of that sentence.
Oh, I think it was brain connection.
Yeah,
But
yeah, something like that. It's bonkers. I don't understand it, but I'm very grateful for it all the time.
I mean, I think that cobbling should be an established practice.
Oh,
Like all the time. I'm like, please, someone cobble this. Kayla's asleep. And no one will.
to clarify, we call it cobbling when we take over each other's stories for a second. You know the story of what is it? It's like some shoemaker.
The cobbler and like the elves.
Yeah, and the elves at night just come in and like.
yeah, no, I didn't think you meant like beating people.
No. But it's
No, because like often what will happen is like one of us will go to sleep, and then like while we're asleep, the other person will just be like, by the way, I just wrote a paragraph of your fic. I hope you like it. Like whatever. And then we'll wake up to a beautiful surprise.
Sometimes they'll be like, Emma, help me. I need you to write the next line of my fic. And then Emma's just like, and there's like 6 paragraphs and I'm like, you can stop. Like,
I'm sorry.
What is Rose thinking dirty thoughts about? That could be an event. Like a weekly event.
Yeah, I don't think that should be an event.
But it could be an event.
It could.
Anyway.
All right. Let's call it an evening. Thank you both for sharing your story and for writing something that's pretty amazing. And
Thank you for having us.
Of course.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. And thank you everyone who tuned in and watched this after the fact. Hope you enjoy your Saturday or Sunday or whenever. All right. Bye.
Rose just like straight up leave.
Rose yeeted herself out of here.
Wait, but how do we?
We're still live.
No one else has the power to make us not live.